PFT PM Posse. Is there any actual benefit to the Cowboys game plan because Trey Lance is here now? Doesn't seem like there would be, since Kyle Shanahan could coach circles around Mike McCarthy in his sleep, and things change so much. Miles Simmons and I talked about this today on PFT Live. The question is, I see that 2 minutes early is trending on Twitter now too, because they got us with the emergency alert. 2 minutes early, see when you least expect it. The challenge is not to understand what the 49ers do. It's what are they going to do? What are they going to do against this team this day? How are they going to attack this version of this defense? And that's where Trey Lance can be helpful. Not what have they done in the past, but as Mike McCarthy and Dan Quinn, the defensive coordinator, try to get in position so they understand how Kyle Shanahan will attack, maybe you tap into Trey Lance to get some information that will help you make a good guess as to what is coming. Not what's happened, but what is coming. There will be a unique game plan specifically designed for this game, this day, with 4 games of tape from this year that can be used to come up with that game plan where, as Sims knows, and as Sims taught me, Kyle Shanahan starts with the run first and then passes off of that. But these two teams are physically equal, and we'll see what they do on Sunday night. Another one from PFT PM Posse. Can teams work in terms when trading draft picks so a team doesn't potentially have their hands tied if someone like Aaron Rodgers goes down and it's clear and obvious he won't play 70% of the snaps? If so, would teams do it? This gets into the whole idea that the Jets have a conditional pick for next year. First rounder, if Aaron Rodgers plays, I think the number is 65% of the snaps. Second rounder if he doesn't. We know he's not going to, although he is determined to come back at some point during the regular season. But we know as a practical matter he's not going to. But what happens is those 2 picks are essentially an escrow. The Jets can't do anything with those 2 picks. They're both caught up in the terms of the trade. Now, I think in theory, the Jets could trade the second round pick because then the Packers would get the first round pick and they'd gladly take it. But my understanding is if the Packers wanted to have access to that first round pick now for trade purposes, which they don't because they're not going out to get a starting quarterback. But if they did, I think they'd have to go back to the Packers and rework the terms where they could essentially agree, okay, we know Aaron Rodgers has a ruptured Achilles. We'll send you the medical information so you can see. And yeah, he wants to come back, but he's not going to participate in 65% of the snaps. Can we just have our first round pick? And the response I have to that is, why would the Packers do it? What's in it for them? Teams are not in the habit of doing favors for other teams. Teams in need. Give us a 7th round pick, 6th round pick, give us something and we'll do it. But we're not doing it for nothing. You wouldn't do it for nothing. Why should we do it for nothing? And it's not the kind of gratuity that would get extended like a professional courtesy that comes up from time to time. This never comes up. When does it ever come up? So it's not like you scratch our back now, we'll scratch your back later. It's not one of those things. So I think they would have to, if the Jets wanted to have the freedom of that first round pick so they could trade it to someone else between now and the closing of the trade window, which comes 4 weeks from today, they'd have to rework their deal with the Packers. And again, I don't think they're going to. One more from PFT PM Posse. Whatever happened to Taco Bill, who had so many amazing drawings, illustrations, etc. from the early days of PFT? Tell us the whole Taco Bill story, and is there any way we can get the old Taco Bill archived artwork? Taco Bill was a guy who just reached out to me out of the blue and started sending in these photoshopped images that were funny, and we would use them, and I can't even remember when it started. Once we went to NBC and fell under an official Getty Images license, and I think we had an AP license at the time, we were told basically they were getting ready to shut that practice down anyway of taking their photos and putting a twist on it, putting a spin on it, putting something on it to make it funny. So once we joined NBC, the Taco Bill images ended, and I haven't heard from him in a long time. And we ultimately were paying him. Once we started making money, we started paying him a fee for every one that we decided to use. The arrangement was you can send in as many as you want. If I use it, we'll pay you X dollars. It wasn't much per photo, But that's what we eventually did. At first, he just did it for free because he liked the site and he thought it was fun and it was, a nice little hobby for him. But once we started making Sprint money, that's when we started paying him. But then by the time we went to NBC, that was the end of the Taco Bill experience with PFT. Dr. J144, Matt Canada's burner account may or may not have been real, but my question is, have you ever been tempted to make a burner account? You can be a bit of a lightning rod at times because you're willing to speak on topics that others aren't, which we as fans appreciate. Well, I appreciate that you appreciate it. Look, first of all, I don't care what people say, what people think, because the passion that gets people to take shots at me is the passion that brings them here in the first place. That was a conversation I had with my wife when we first had comments. She would read them and say, do you see what they're saying? And I said, don't read it. And second of all, it's the passion that brings them here that manifests itself in those kinds of comments. True fans get mad at anyone who isn't showing their team proper respect. I used to be that way. If I was 23 years old in this era, I would be as big of an ass as the biggest ass is toward me, because I would think, you hate my team, you're wrong, here's why, and you get paid more than enough money to take it. And that's my attitude. I mean, even the worst day in this job is better than the best day in the job I used to have. Well, I don't know. Some of the days when the jury comes in with a nice verdict, those are pretty good days. Other than those days, look, I'm never stressed out. I'm never it gets busy and hectic, but I never have anyone else's interests in my hands. I still think about cases I handled 15, 20 years ago where, boy, if I just would have done this differently, if I would have done that differently, would we have gotten a better outcome? I didn't like carrying that around. With this, I do my job to the best of my abilities. I try to be right about anything and everything we report. And I'm far more careful now than I used to be because of the NBC relationship. And I'm not bashful about sharing my opinions, and I know that if it's going to piss some people off, so be it. And if they want to say bad things about me, so be it. And we don't have comments anymore, but they can say it on Twitter. They can say it wherever. And there really is a strange difference between Twitter and YouTube. When we put these videos on YouTube, the comments are so positive. It makes me think, does NBC have a farm of burners that I don't know about? This is not how it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be a bunch of people saying, hey, you're great job. You're the man. Great video. Thanks for this. Thanks for that. I like this. I like that. It's supposed to be, you're a dumbass or worse. So I don't feel compelled to do it. And I also believe that it's the kind of thing that if you do it, you're eventually going to get caught. You're eventually going to get found out. You're eventually going to screw up. You're eventually going to make a mistake. You're going to post that. Remember when Skip Bayless did that? He posted something that would have been from his burner on his main Twitter account, and it was clear he had a burner because it was the kind of thing you'd put on a burner. And remember when the report came out that Roger Goodell's wife had a burner that she was using to defend him? And I've told my wife, don't ever do that. And I can understand if your spouse wants to support you that way, but I've never had one. I never will have one because number one, I don't care. And number two, I don't trust myself to do it in a way that will keep it concealed, because I believe, and this may be 12 years of Catholic school and the guilt that comes from it, keeping me from doing it. I believe you always will get caught, especially if you're trying to pull off a burner account. Another one from Dr. J. When do we start asking if Brian Daboll is a repeat of Ben McAdoo? Both made the playoffs first season in New York, then things went south quickly in year two. McAdoo didn't get the benefit of the doubt year two like Daboll has so far. Well, Daboll has a quarterback. There's no quarterback that could have functioned behind that offensive line on Monday night. There's none. This is just like what's going on with the Jets. Zach Wilson is the problem. That's what they were saying before. Zach Wilson flipped the switch on Sunday night against the Chiefs. Now, who knows? Maybe Zach Wilson is the answer. But everyone's dumping on Daniel Jones. Ed Donatel was trending on Monday because the Giants fans are blaming the former Vikings defensive coordinator for having such a bad defense that it forced the Giants to pay Daniel Jones $40 million a year. Look, no quarterback can do anything without time. There's that one clip out there of a four-man rush devouring the Giants' offensive line and getting Daniel Jones before he could do anything. So the offensive line's a problem. Andrew Thomas was injured. Evan Neal has been banged up and not as good as maybe they thought he was going to be. They've had other injuries. They lost 2 blockers on Monday night when they tried to do the quarterback push play. Offensive line. You've got to have a competent offensive line or you can't do anything as an offense. That's the challenge. And the problem is once you're into a season, 4 weeks, what can you do to really make your offensive line better? What can you do? It's not like you can go find a great offensive lineman. And any team that has one is not going to trade them. And any great offensive lineman out there with options is probably not going to want to come play for you because it's going to take more than one great offensive lineman to turn this thing around. But we'll see. The vibe with the Giants to me is like last year didn't even happen. Like it's already as bad as it was pre-2022. And if anything, last year has made it harder for them because now they're stuck with Daniel Jones through 2024. And I keep thinking of the Saquon Barkley situation. We had reported back in July before Barkley and the Giants didn't work out a long-term contract. The Giants had gone to him first because they had Barkley and Jones headed for free agency. Remember, they didn't pick up the 5th-year option on Jones. So both guys were heading to free agency at the same time. They wanted to sign Barkley to a long-term deal and franchise tag Jones just so they could be sure. When Barkley rejected their offer, that's when they pivoted to Jones, and now they're stuck with Jones through 2024, no matter what happens this year. Now, they don't have to play him, but they're paying him, and he gets a lot of money next year. And then after 2024, they could tear up the contract and move on. Tom Marshall, fresh from the first UK game of the year, Arizona UK. Is it too early to say the Panthers picked the wrong quarterback? Yes, it's too early to say it, but it's not too early to wonder. When you look at what CJ Stroud has done through 4 weeks, I think if the Panthers knew that CJ Stroud was going to do what he did, they would have taken him over Bryce Young. Because the issue with Bryce Young was size and durability. And what have we already seen? He's missed a game because of an ankle injury. And it just feels like something's missing. He may grow into the job. He may end up being great. But this is the danger of having your owner involved. And they can say whatever they want. It really does feel like the owner was involved in the process. And the owner's the one who fell in love with Bryce Young. And they got so caught up in that S2 test, that processing test. See, that's where biases manifest themselves. If there's somebody you just like, and there's a bunch of different factors you could point to differentiate the guy you like from the guy that you really don't have an opinion about, and you want to go with the guy you really like, you're going to err on the side of overly emphasizing the thing that justifies your bias. Well, he really nailed the S2 test, and CJ Stroud didn't. Well, we got to go with Bryce Young, the guy that I really like. You know, not only a handful of teams rely on the S2 test. If it was such a great indicator of who's going to be a great player, everybody would use it. So they might have picked the wrong quarterback. If I was in Carolina right now, I'd be very concerned. I'd also be very glad that it wasn't a team in my division that I have to see twice per year. It could be that the Panthers blew it both as to Stroud and Anthony Richardson, that of the 3 that were available top of the draft, they picked the one guy who maybe doesn't work out. But it's still early. The other side of the coin is you don't get many cracks at it before people come to the conclusion that you are a bust. Another one from Dr. J144. Why is Mark Davis telling fans to smarten up regarding Josh McDaniels? Isn't the verdict in now? What else do we need to see to determine he's a better offensive coordinator than head coach? All he does as a head coach is lose. It still is early, but it kind of isn't. The problem with the Patriot way is at some point you got to win. At some point, you've got to bust through. That attitude, the relationship with players. Now, they're not as standoffish with the media as Bill Belichick was, but you can't avoid, at some level, being like Bill Belichick, and that's going to rub people the wrong way within your building. And if you're not winning, you don't get the benefit of the doubt. If you're winning, you can do whatever you want. I don't think Mark Davis likes buying out contracts, and he had to pay a lot of money to move on from Jon Gruden. It occurred to me when I was doing the power rankings, because I think I made this comment. We're just about 2 years to the day removed from Jon Gruden being forced out due to the surfacing of the emails he sent while he was working for ESPN, sent them to Bruce Allen, the former president of the Washington football team. Does Mark Davis wish he could bring Jon Gruden back? And would he bring him back if he could? I don't know. Bottom line is the Raiders have not been good for a very long time. And since Mark Davis inherited the team, they've been to the playoffs twice, I think, and they've yet to win a postseason game. Another one from Tom Marshall. Did Mrs. Florio secretly enjoy your COVID isolation? I haven't gotten many text messages pining for me to, be able to spend time with her and have dinner with her and be anywhere but my office. Where I've been since I tested positive on Thursday morning, here in my office. Right next door is a guest bedroom where I will often take my little afternoon nap because I sleep 5 hours at night and one during the day. So I've been here, I've been there, I've been in my studio for both PFT Live and for the Sunday NBC obligations, and I've been down to the barn a couple of times. And that's it. I haven't been down to the gym to work out. I haven't been down to the basement. I went down once last night to get ice because I think I'm I'm beyond the 5-day isolation, and I think I did test negative. But yeah, I think she kind of enjoyed it. I know Macy enjoyed it because it means she gets to sleep with mommy. But what's been hard for me, this is the hardest part, because I put a mask on to go from room to room. I'll put a mask on to go up to the studio, put the mask on to come back down. The dog sees me and wants to interact with me. And I don't want to make the dog sick. I don't know about dogs and COVID. I'm just trying to avoid the dog. And the dog's looking at me like, what's wrong with you, asshole? So I know she's accurate. I know. Great judge of character. I know. All right. JC Carm, when Al Michaels leaves the Thursday Night Football booth, does that mean Kirk Herbstreit is gone too? I don't know. I don't know how long Al's going to stay. I don't know how long Herbstreit's going to stay. I'm going to watch the game no matter what. Aren't you going to watch the game no matter what? No matter who does the game? Thursday Night Football, Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football. It could be the kids from South Park, which actually would not be, we might be onto something there. But it doesn't matter. We're going to watch the games regardless. I think we get a little too twisted up in who's actually calling the games. It is nice to hear Al's voice. For those of us who've been following football for a long time, there's a comfort in that. Great voice. We've heard it for years. It's as comfortable as the spot on your couch, that thing you like to drink or eat when you're watching a game, your rituals, your routines. So I'm glad Al's still doing it. But whatever's next, whoever they hire, we're going to watch it. We're going to watch it because we're there for the game. We're not there for the announcers. Another one from JC Carm. Who has more pressure to succeed, Zach Wilson or Justin Fields or Mac Jones? Will any of these three be on their current teams next year? Well, I think Zach Wilson will be as the backup to Aaron Rodgers, because I think Aaron Rodgers is going to want him there. Aaron Rodgers has so much power over the Jets. So much power, especially now that he's busting his ass in rehab to try to come back and play this year. If he wants Zach Wilson there next year, he'll be there. I don't think Justin Fields will be with the Bears. I've seen some chatter of maybe a trade to the Falcons. That would make sense. Because it's not like the Bears are giving up their bread and butter. He's fun to watch, but they've won 3 games in the last 2 years with him and none this year. They're 3-18 with Justin Fields at quarterback. Mac Jones is going to be interesting. Look, if they change coaches in New England, they may change quarterbacks as well. And I did hear reliably, and I know that people like to dispute whatever we report if they can, but I did hear that there was an effort to dangle Mac Jones. Subtle but unmistakable effort. And maybe they wish they had. Because you either have it or you don't. And Mac doesn't have it. I mean, there are basic things he can do. And if you had a great team around him, he's not even at the Kirk Cousins level, though. He's going to come out and throw for, 450 yards and take every hit and just keep going. He's not even to that level. Is he a top 20 quarterback? I don't think so. The Patriots aren't good enough to win with a guy who isn't in the top 20. Sean, at official Big Sean. Why are people wanting the Eagles tush push? I hate that name. I just call it quarterback push. Why do they want that play banned? Is it because they have perfected it? I saw 4 or 5 other teams unsuccessfully try the play this week. If that's the case, ban pre-snap movement because Tyreek Hill is too fast. Look, here's the general process for how this all happened. There was a rule against pulling or pushing players. They never flagged a team for pushing a teammate with the ball, and it usually happened near the end of the play. Lineman comes running down, shoves the pile. They never called it. So I think it was in 2006. I may have to go back and refresh my memory on this, but they went and they said, well, you know what? If we're never going to call this, let's just forget about the rule. And then 2022, the Eagles finally realized we can use this affirmatively in our planning. It just doesn't look good. It doesn't look like football. There's no artistry to it. It's just kind of an ugly clot of bodies. But here's the reality. If they made that play illegal, wouldn't the Eagles still be able to pull off the quarterback sneak whenever they wanted to? I mean, the Patriots used to be able to do it because Tom Brady was great at finding that crack and diving through it. So I don't think they need it. And you're right, other teams have tried it and it hasn't worked out. And you potentially get players injured, as the Giants did. 2 blockers, a tight end and a guard, I think, got injured when the Giants tried it unsuccessfully on Monday night. And the Chargers tried it unsuccessfully on Sunday, a week after Keenan Allen told me when they did a handoff on 4th and short, hey, we should do that quarterback push play. I thought of that. We should do that. We should. And then I guess they listened and they did it, and it didn't work. Amused to Death 44, NBC said they had 2 million new female viewers. How can they possibly know the gender of their viewers? I don't know how Nielsen does things. I don't know how they figure all that out. I really don't know, but they have a way to do it, and they have analytics and they have formulas and they can do the calculations. So I think that there is some merit to it, however they go about doing. Another one from Amused to Death, and I like this one. I heard all players who suffered concussions this season, not one of them was able to play the next game. That wasn't always the case. Had they tightened up the protocols? They're never going to come out and say it. I think the Tua Tagovailoa stuff last year may have caused the NFL to become a little more cautious. There was a period of time, once the NFL had its concussion epiphany, October of 2009, 14 years ago, hauled up to Congress to talk about head injuries, head trauma, what the league and the union has done, what they failed to do. They changed the concussion protocol then and put into play this process where you have an unaffiliated neurotrauma consultant who makes the decision as to whether or not a player can be cleared to play. At first, it felt like the presumption was if you had a concussion, you would not play the following week. And then after a few years, the pendulum went the other way. And I think all the stuff with Tua last year caused the pendulum to swing back to, if you're concussed, you're probably not going to get cleared in 1 week. So they're not going to come out and tell us that. They're not going to admit that they're influenced by those kinds of dynamics, but it sure feels like the pendulum, which started here, went here, is now back over here. And the thing to watch in the coming years, does it start to move back the other way, where the presumption becomes if you get a concussion, more likely than not, you'll be cleared by the following week. JC Carm, with his current level of play, what's the best possible outcome for Josh Dobbs after Kyler Murray comes back? I mean, it's going to be go sit on the bench, assuming Kyler Murray even plays this year. There is a very strong business reason for Kyler Murray not to play, but the Cardinals are better than I thought they were going to be because in the offseason, they weren't making decisions that prioritized winning this year, but they still are better than they were supposed to be. So we'll see what happens with Kyler Murray. There are significant guarantees for injury that will become fully guaranteed if he can't pass a physical by not long after the 2023 season ends. So Josh Dobbs goes to the bench. You need a backup in the event Kyler Murray gets injured again. They're not going to trade him. They're going to keep him. And he's the backup. And then maybe next year, I think he just did a 1-year contract. He could go somewhere else and compete to be a starter. JC Carm, why haven't the Vikings gotten a deal done with Justin Jefferson? It's as simple as the Vikings have a guarantee structure that doesn't fully guarantee multiple years now. It rolls every year. A lot of teams will do a guarantee that goes like this. let's say you've got 2 years fully guaranteed right out of the gates. And then by March of year 2, the third year becomes fully guaranteed. By March of year 3, the fourth year becomes fully guaranteed. It goes like that. The Vikings are in a small group of teams that won't do that except for quarterback. They did it for Kirk Cousins. And it's full guarantee this year, injury guarantee next year. Next year, the injury guarantee becomes fully guaranteed. The next year, the injury guarantee becomes fully guaranteed. It goes 1 year at a time. Justin Jefferson wants more and deserves more security than that. They've done it for Kirk Cousins. They didn't do it for Jefferson. I think at the end of the day, that's the main reason why a deal didn't get done. And now the question becomes, will a deal ever get done in Minnesota for Justin Jefferson, or will he be? And my theory was, if they don't get a deal done by the start of the season, after the season, he potentially becomes part of the package to allow the Vikings to move up for a Caleb Williams or a Drake May, somebody that will be a franchise quarterback. They've had great defensive linemen. They've had great defensive backs. They've had great receivers. They haven't had a great quarterback since Fran Tarkenton, and they haven't been back to the Super Bowl since Fran Tarkenton. Last one from JC Carm. Why does no one mention a contract extension for Tua? Well, because Tua and the Dolphins seem to have this understanding that they'll do it after the season. And we need to see what he does this season before we know whether or not he deserves an extension after the season. I think so much of it is premised on him staying healthy all year long. But at some point during this season, it becomes fair to say, hey, look, the guy was drafted the same year as Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert, and he's playing better than both of them. He is right now, given that Joe Burrow is hobbling around on one leg. At some point, it becomes a little conspicuous. And Tua's not the kind of guy to come out and say anything about it. Maybe behind the scenes he will. But at some point, I think it's fair to ask. And I've kind of poked around at that a little bit. At what point do the Dolphins say, we're going to take care of Tua? We don't need him to be healthy all year long. We see that he's our guy. We see that he's our future. And we don't have to worry about our offensive coordinator going somewhere else as a head coach, because our offensive coordinator is our head coach. Watch Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is inching toward the same problem they had with Lovie Smith and Dirk Cutter back when Jameis Winston developed well in 2015. What did they do after 2015? They nudged Lovie Smith out and they gave the job to Dirk Cutter. Why? Because they were afraid they were going to lose Dirk Cutter and they were going to have to start over with another offensive coordinator. And now you got Dave Canales there. The offense is working. The Buccaneers are good. Baker Mayfield has rediscovered his mojo from 2018 and 2020. And Canales is going to potentially be a candidate to be a head coach elsewhere. And the Buccaneers are going to have to start all over again next year. I'm not saying they're going to have a repeat of what occurred in 2016. But, and this goes back to my other point, we know that McDaniel is going to be the head coach in Miami. So if it's working with him in Tua, why not keep it going? Why not pay Tua? Why not put an offer on the table? This is an opportunity for the Dolphins to put an offer on the table that Tua would likely take and that will be far less than what he would get after the season. I'm glad you asked that question, JC Carm. Now I got a little post I can write and I can put this video in there, so thank you very much. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.